District Commission. We now call the meeting to order. If the Secretary would please call the roll.
John Sheehan?
Here.
Vincent O'Dwyer?
Here.
Theodore Aspergen? Mary Jo Valdez? Here. John Rotos?
Here.
Chris Fagan?
Here.
Michael Conroy?
Here. We have a quorum. And first of all, I would like to ask if everyone had the opportunity to take a look at the minutes for last month's meeting. Any changes or corrections on the minutes? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have one application suggested for summary approval, and that is 33 William Street. Are there any objectors to that? This is recommended for summary approval because it is deemed to be complete or so complete as to only require the submission of additional information that is minor in scope and can be approved administratively within 14 days, and B, the proposed work being deemed not to be incongruous with the subject property or the surrounding historic district resources. But entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact as presented in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I would further entertain a motion to approve this application under the summary calendar.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have several continued applications this evening. The first one is for 55 Arald Street. I'm going to ask the Secretary to please identify the application.
55 Arald Street, Plot 1291, Lot 280, and the owner is requesting several changes to the property.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Andrew Teitz, T as in Thomas, E-I-T-Z, an attorney with offices at 2 William Street in Providence, Rhode Island, representing the owners of the property. And actually, that's the first thing that we need to know. You have us listed as still under the prior owner, Paul Valentine. Mr. and Mrs. Morton were in the process of purchasing this property when it was first applied for. They have completed the purchase. They are the owners of the property, and they're both here personally tonight. So I just wanted to make that clear for the record.
We actually have Robert and Drusilla Morton on the applications.
Okay, well, the agenda still has it as Valentine, so I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. And in fact, the Mortons are longtime residents of the neighborhood who live just up the street on the corner of Catherine Street there for 20 years. And as you probably have heard before, they're planning on making this their new home, making certain changes. And just for disclosure purposes, I myself am a former resident of the neighborhood. I lived for several years at 68 Arald Street, the house my parents owned for 50 years. So, just by disclosure. Procedural history, there were several things that were being asked for, and you have, in fact, approved most of those already. The dormer on the rear, and the skylight, and those things, everything's approved. The only issue that's remaining before you, the sole open item, is the front porch. There were concerns raised, I understand, and I wasn't here before, but I understand about the porch as being a conjectural feature, and in particular there was concerns about damage to the house itself, the structure of the house, particularly the pediment and the frieze with the new porch. And I note that this is not considered a contributing structure, but nevertheless, my clients and their architect did listen to your concerns, and changes were made to the porch, and those are the updated plans you have before you, such that this porch is going to be fully reversible. It's going to be added on. It's not going to remove any of the fabric. It's been designed so that the pediment of the doorway will be still completely visible under the porch and untouched, and it's a fully reversible item. Before I call the witnesses, I just wanted to submit, if I could, we had letters from several of the neighbors in support, and I'll just give the names and addresses now for the stenographer, and then you can have them in the record. William and Jean Harrington, 53 Arald Street. Michael Green and Joyce Kirby, 51 Arald Street. Anita Conway, 50 Arald Street. Kathleen Papp, 52 Arald Street. Ronald and Sandra Bernier, 73 Arald Street. Dr. Anthony Caputi, who is at 78 Arald Street, and Admiral McCoy, who's at 82 Arald Street. Now, I do apologize. My clients left the originals at home. I have the copies. I'm going to submit the copies at this point as an exhibit, and we will substitute the original, or provide you in addition the originals at a later date, so you'll have them for the record.
Thank you. I'd like to enter these into the record. There are 6 letters of support. 7 letters?
Yes, I believe so.
Do I have to enter them as separate exhibits? We will enter these 7 letters as Exhibit A into the record.
Thank you. At this point, I call the architect, Gail Goff. And if I could submit for the record her qualifications.
Thank you. Let's enter this, the architect's CV into the record as Exhibit B.
And just for the record, you are a licensed architect?
I am.
And you've had experience with historic structures in the Newport area?
I have.
In fact, you've appeared before this board before?
I have. I have served on this board.
I would ask, obviously, that you be accepted as a historic architect expert.
I do.
Could you tell the board a little bit about the plans, particularly focusing on the porch and the changes to the porch last year?
Well, I originally came before the board with additions to the front and the rear, and there being a dormer on the rear, and then connecting the 3 doghouse dormers on the front and the front porch. And there were concerns about all of them. So the second time I came before the commission, I had modified the rear dormer and eliminated the infill between the doghouse dormers on the front, and adjusted the porch so that it did not, it just attached to the front of the house and did not cut off the pediment, and the pediment would be visible from the street, so that the only connections at the frieze would be about 8 inches on both sides.
And you actually also changed the design slightly of the porch so that it would be, the pediment would be more visible. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so in your opinion as an architect, would this new porch be able to be removed without any damage, other than that 8-inch section of the frieze? Would there be any damage to the rest of the house, including the rest of the frieze or the pediment?
No.
Now, I don't know if the board, the commission wants to talk about any specific issues now, or you'd like me to finish and then get to your questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. Then I'm going to call my next witness, if you don't mind, which would be Mr. Arnold Robinson.
Thank you. We'll enter this Arnold N. Robinson CB into the record as Exhibit C.
I don't know if you want me to go through it or not, or if you're comfortable, based on your past experience with him and his credentials, accepting him as an expert in historic preservation.
I think we have enough information here.
Thank you. Trying to be cognizant of the rest of your application.
Thank you.
I do. Arnold N. Robinson.
And Mr. Robinson, have you had occasion to examine this 55 Arrow Street, which is a subject before?
I have. I have toured the exterior of the building.
And are you familiar with the neighborhood as well?
Very familiar with the neighborhood, yes.
Could you tell us just a little bit about how you're familiar with the neighborhood?
Sure. I was with Newport Collaborative Architects for 9 years and did projects in this neighborhood, but also spent a lot of time walking around this neighborhood looking at the architecture. Also spent time before this application reviewing the National Register nomination, as well as some of the state survey forms for the neighborhood.
And you also examined the previous action on the house 2 doors down at 51 April. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Could you just tell the commission a little bit about this house and its neighboring houses in the neighborhood, what your information is?
Sure. After reading the survey forms that the city has on file and finding very little information otherwise, I decided to go back and dig through the Sanborn maps and also look at some directories to get a sense of the context. And the site upon which this building and the 2 other colonial revival buildings sit was once a fairly typical large lot Victorian estate house that was on the site that was removed, and at some point probably in the mid-1930s, that site was cleared and these buildings were built around 1937, all in the colonial revival style. And so there's a sort of continuity to them. They also have identical garages in the back that tie them together as well.
Now, talking in particular about the porches, first talking about these houses and porches. You've done some research on aspects of houses and porches that were built at that time in the colonial revival style?
I did. I wanted to understand.
Before you do that,
sure.
Is this something that you've prepared?
It is. One of my pieces of research was to look at period documents to understand stylistically what might have been going on with pattern book houses, Cape-style houses of this period, what would have been the typical fabric or in the minds of the builders and the architects in that period. So one of those things is a 1929 publication, Small Houses for Architects, and I wanted to understand what might be the appropriate styles of building types that were going on, if you could hand that out. Certainly.
Oh, this is a single sheet.
Right, single sheet.
So what you're seeing is a... Oh, sure.
I have a document here from Small Homes of Distinction from 1920s describing houses with downstairs bedrooms as the title of the article. We're going to enter it into the record as Exhibit D.
Okay, so now if you could talk about it.
Sure. What you're seeing is a design for very similar Cape-style houses, which could be modulated out in the field so that you could have a house without a porch and a different style dormer, or that could be modulated to include a porch on the front. The point being that you can find in these builders' catalogs sort of different forms of fabric, the same building type, but sometimes with different additions to it, sometimes with porch elements on the front, sometimes with different forms of dormers.
So it wouldn't necessarily have been typical if you had a real Cape Cod in the 1700s to have found a front porch on it, correct?
That is correct.
But many of them would have had porches added over the years, even if they were original to the 17th, 18th century colonial period. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And does this indicate here, it would be appropriate also to have it on a colonial revival house from the 1930s?
Very appropriate to have it in the period. It would have been one of those forms available to a builder, forms available to an architect, and it would have been up to a client intent, but it is appropriate to the overall style in the period.
Now, you could also, you looked at
That's correct.
Aerial photo, Mr. Robinson described it in more detail.
Exhibit E will be an aerial photo of the plat where the neighborhood where the house exists.
One of the important pieces that I take into consideration when thinking about the appropriateness of changes to historic buildings is thinking about the overall context, and not just an individual change to a building, but is it appropriate to the character of the neighborhood. So I took this aerial picture from off of Bing Maps and then went out in the field to inventory porches within a 1-block radius to try to understand which buildings have significant front porches and to circle those to get a sense of, is this something that's appropriate to the character of the historic neighborhood? So you can see the subject property is circled in blue, and the properties that have significant front porches are circled in red, and there's quite a predominance of porches that front on the street, and I think that's important from a couple of different perspectives. This neighborhood was, many parts of this neighborhood were developed during the colonial revival. That was part of the language to provide that outdoor living space, but also from an urban standpoint, having that face on the street is important as well, and so that front face. So it's not out of keeping with the character of the neighborhood to have front porches addressing the street.
If I could ask you particularly to relate your research and your findings, particularly some of the standards which this commission would be considering. Well, whichever one you want. Let's start off with 1 or start off with 7, work backwards. I'll let you choose the order you want.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, we start off with standards 1 and 4.
As the architect has testified to, this lands very lightly on the historic structure. It's been minimized for its impact to the historic fabric. So in terms of standards 1 and standards 4 of the Newport standards, it has a minimal impact on the historic fabric and doesn't remove character defining features from the structure. From a standpoint of standard 2, this is within keeping of architectural language of buildings of the period. Standard 2 very much harkens back to the Secretary of Interior Standards 2 in some of its language, which is about features that harken backwards in time. When the standards were written, it was to prevent sort of earlying up buildings, making them earlier than they appeared, so taking Victorians and making them colonial revivals. But this proposed porch is in keeping with the architectural character of a building from the 1930s in the colonial revival style.
And also with respect to then standard 7.
Standard 7 is the not changing the essential form and minimizing harm, and it does this by retaining those key elements on the front, by revealing the pediment underneath, and those relationships still remain while the change is still reversible.
So in your expert opinion, would this be in conflict or violate any of the standards which this commission needs to approve?
In my opinion, it doesn't violate any of the standards.
And in fact, in your opinion, would it be appropriate addition for this neighborhood and this historic character?
Yes, as seen by the aerial photo showing overall character and as precedents from the period, it is appropriate.
I have nothing further to this.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Robinson, if you will. In the 1974 inventory, these houses, along with many other houses in Newport, were not considered contributing to the historic district. In your professional opinion as a historian, historic architect, would you at this time, 75 years later, consider these to be contributing properties? The houses I can think maybe there's one to the east or south and 3 or 4 to the west.
Yes, I would use the language that the National Park Service uses, which is they've acquired significance. And so they tell the story about the district. And so then they can be reviewed under this commission's standards. In that sense, they're not a pure non-contributing building. They've acquired significance. And so you review them with that in mind.
So, I mean, it doesn't pertain to our ruling this evening because they are considered non-contributing buildings, but at some point I think that we should establish that they are contributing buildings at 75 years of duration without significant changes. The other question is there is
some... This is where we've tried to prove, to show you that even if they were contributing,
I understand.
that the buildings were contributing structures.
The drawings don't show it, but there is a fairly noticeable dental molding under the roof edge of the building. And although the pediment is still exposed with the porch, I think that the dental molding might not be visible. But the question is, would you consider that dental molding a character-defining feature?
I would consider it to be a character-defining feature, and the question would then rest on reversibility. Like many buildings in Newport where we might have a colonial building underneath and then they're in Victorian period, the porch was added, underneath are still those elements.
So to the best of your knowledge, this might be a better question for Ms. Goff, the dental molding will remain, but it won't be exposed to the street?
Well, it actually will be exposed, but you'd have to be walking up the roof, the walkway a little bit to see it. You wouldn't have the same view from out on the street, but it will be exposed.
Okay.
So when you're walking up this door, you will see it.
Very good. Anyone?
Just have to confirm that to you in the record. Is that correct?
The dental molding would stay intact except for 8 inches on either side.
And it will be visible as well.
It'll be visible from the street because you're at a lower elevation.
Any other questions for these witnesses? This one? Anyone? All set? Very good. I think we should deliberate on this. And if you're finished...
I am. Thank you.
We'll close the hearing and have a discussion. I still feel, as I have all along, that these are significant houses that we should vote to make contributing at some point in the near future. I find that the porch is a profound change, but I'm only one person.
Mr. Chairman, I think perhaps Mr. Robinson has given us a solution here. In the article from Small Homes of Distinction, the porch that is shown has no rail system. It's very transparent. The house behind the porch is given predominance over the porch itself. And if perhaps this design could be changed slightly to eliminate the mahogany rail system, if that does meet code. I don't know if the porch is low enough to where it does not need a rail system. Perhaps Ms. Goff can tell us if that's the case or not. But perhaps if the owners would consider the porch without the rail system, that might be acceptable.
Ms. Goff, could you come up and answer that question for us, please? I'm trying to extrapolate what the height of the deck of the porch might be.
The deck, the porch height is low enough so it does not require a railing for code reason.
If I may, it may not require it for code reasons, but I think it requires it for use reasons. If we're going to have a porch, going to have a chair, tables, whatnot on there, there needs to be some defining element to define the edge of the porch, the front of the house. I think we'd certainly be amenable to a simpler system, a more modern, if you will, looking system and more transparent system there across the front. But I think we need something there just to have it, and even not with code. And my clients will forgive me for saying this, but they're not young people, so we'd like to have something in the way there of a railing, although I'm sure we could come up with something simpler than what's there.
Well, I think that's a very good point, Ms. Valdez, and I like it. I like the porch better with something simpler. Do you want to do the design review thing? And I think we could make this approvable at design review.
Sure.
Level. I think that would generally be a week from Thursday. Will we have Mother back at that point?
Probably not.
Would you like to join us?
I know. I know, I'll be there.
Okay. What is the date?
29th.
Be the 29th at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, Thursday.
So that's the only thing. I think based on those suggestions, we can move forward, and I would make it approvable at Design Review Subcommittee if that's amenable to all parties.
Mr. Chairman, could you just approve the porch with the exception of the railing?
Yes.
At least something's done here.
All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I would further entertain a motion to approve the porch without the rail, and the rail to be deferred to Design Review Subcommittee, approvable at subcommittee level.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries. One opposed, Mr. Grotos.
Thank you very much. I just want to confirm, so if the Design Review Committee, Subcommittee approves it, then we don't have to come back here.
All right.
If they don't approve it, we still have the option to come back here. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have someone here representing 1416 John Street? Maybe that's... We don't have any information on that, do we, Mr. Weston?
I haven't heard it.
I don't want to dismiss it in the event that it's scheduled to come at December.
There's no notification that it's continued.
Nothing in the notes.
No.
Because they didn't present it last month, because there were abutters who objected to it having not seen the application. And then they asked that they continue, and I believe it was to November.
Why don't we just continue it one more month?
Or just hang on to it until the end of the meeting?
Yeah, then continue it.
Or we can do that now, continue it to December? Or we'll wait and do it later. Then, where are we? 72 John Street, we have a request for continuance to continue the application for 72 John Street to the December meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve that request for continuance.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. New applications, we have 39 Poplar Street.
Recuse from this application, John?
Mr. Fagan is recused. I'd ask the secretary to please identify the application.
39 Poplar Street, Plat 12, Lot 262, and the owner is requesting various exterior alterations.
Thank you. Good evening.
Michael Palmer.
Would you please give us a brief overview of the application?
Yeah, I've got a contract to do repairs on clapboard and trim and gutter repair. And I do have a permit for the trim and clapboard already. I did get that September before Dana left. So it's basically the gutters we're looking at.
That was administratively approved, is that?
Yes, it was. I got that there. excuse me.
Oh, that's fine.
So we're really looking at trying to repair the gutter. The main house has the exposed rat tails, so putting a wood gutter up there is kind of tough. So they were proposing to put up an aluminum one, the half round, a little bit better than the standard, with the hangers. And there is one on the porch, and they'd like to replace that to match this, which is rotten. And that's pretty much it. That's all they're looking for.
How about the corner boards, the PCB corner boards?
No, we're going wood.
Or wood?
All wood, clapboard, corner boards, trim.
Okay.
Where we get around the windows.
Because the application said PCB.
Yeah, we got a permit. That's why we went for that.
Apparently you have a water problem.
There is. The water sheds off the roof and kind of floods the backyard and runs down around the bulkhead. So this is something that they were looking at doing.
Any questions for Mr. Palmerton?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Most of the water that drains off the roof drains onto the porch roof and then into that gutter?
It sheds off the sides and, comes down the whole area. I was down there watching it once, and it does quite a bit. So we'll get off a lot of the bulkheads to the rear of the house. It hits that and kind of works its way into the basement, so we're going to try to control all that.
My question is, because of the nice detail of the overhangs of the roof, they're going to be, if you look at A2-1, it's going to be a little bit of an odd look that one side is going to have that gutter and the other isn't. Would it be possible on that rear section where the water doesn't flow onto the porch to put a small copper diverter like I'm sure you're familiar with them,
right,
over the doors of colonials? They're not very obtrusive. And do you think that would...
Well, if it doesn't, we really can't put a wooden one up there.
No.
So we'd have to replace we want them to match.
Yes.
I need to replace the lower porch one with wood and put a diverter up there and not have it working. I think we're giving too much water for just a diverter.
Well, if you tried the diverter and it did not work, and it's my understanding that you could come back for approval of the aluminum gutter.
I'd rather put up the gutters now. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it is a little obtrusive, and
why don't we put one on the other side too? And the match.
Does it need one on the other side? I mean,
well, it doesn't affect the porch. I mean, you can do it for the aesthetics of it.
Yeah. I just think it would be nicer looking, and it would be less expensive for the owner. I don't know if anybody else shares my feelings.
Yeah.
I do, if that is a possibility. It might be an easier solution with the understanding that if it doesn't work, then we'll go with a gutter.
Okay, well, I'll learn about it.
So you're proposing these gutters just for the west elevation?
The west for top and bottom.
And is the...
But I wouldn't be opposed to put it on the east side either, if that was...
Yeah, well, that would be... I mean, if you've got a water problem, it's coming on both sides, I would think. Is the gutter on the porch failing?
It is. Yeah, it needs to be repaired. And that's why if you're doing all the work now, it'd be nice to just complete it.
The application says that the gutter on the porch is wood.
It is now.
And you're going to replace it with wood.
Well, the wood, I'd like to match it. I'd like to put this there also.
But the application said it'll be wood. Is that correct? Or no?
I believe we'd prefer to put this up there.
Replace existing porch wood gutter to match existing. This is what the application says. We have approved AZAC gutters.
You have it?
So if you could find a profile that looked like the existing wood gutter. That would certainly be acceptable. From my point of view, these are unobtrusive gutters. They're definitely needed, and they're completely reversible. So my thought would be that if they were able to find an AZAC gutter to replace the one on the porch and to use these half rounds, that I would be okay with it. If you want to see them try the diverters, but I don't think that's going to successfully keep the water out of the basement, in my humble opinion.
Mr. Chairman, would we then be suggesting that he put them on both sides of the house?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact as presented in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
And I would further entertain a motion to approve the application, but for half-round aluminum gutters on both sides of the main house, and for an AZAC or composite gutter resembling the existing one on the porch to replace the one on the porch.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, 26 Moreland Road.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to ask the Secretary to please identify the application.
26 Moreland Road, plat 43, lot 007, and they're requesting window replacement.
Thank you. Should be sworn in.
My name is Dexter Patterson, and I do.
We don't have Mr. Patterson's name as authorized representative here.
I'm here on behalf of Home Depot and Thomas Blake, the owner.
We have Mike Bedard. Can this gentleman represent the application? He can, as far as I'm concerned. It's just not.
Mike does all the permits and things for the company.
Very good. If you'd please give us a brief overview.
I'm trying to replace wooden casement windows, Anderson 400 series windows. They have been replaced in the customer's home at one time before. They're not original. They are Anderson 400 wooden casements, and I am trying to replace those existing windows with the same exact window, an Anderson 400 series casement wood window. It's a full frame construction on the outside. I will be replacing the 908 casing that is rotted with, this identical 908 casing. So the windows are basically exactly the same. These just didn't stand the test of time. They must have got replaced about 20 years ago, and they're not that energy efficient, and they're not working that good.
And you're looking at 6 windows?
Correct.
We don't have any window inventory, which is... Oh, wait a minute.
I think it might be 9.
11 windows.
Yeah. Wow.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions.
Mr. Drotos, yes, please.
Yes, sir.
The current windows are wood or
Yes.
steel?
They're wood.
They're all wood?
Yes.
And you're going to replace 11 of them, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You know when the house was built?
I would have to say before 1900.
Okay.
And they do have some metal windows in the home, but they're not the ones I'm replacing. I'm replacing replacement windows.
So you're replacing in kind, basically?
Yes.
Same color, everything? will
Same
be the
color, black on the exterior, painted white on the interior. There's no grills in these particular windows, but if there were, they would be simulated divided light, so they're actual wood inside, and they have the fixed exterior.
but there isn't in these windows.
Thanks.
Here's the problem we have with applications of this type. This is a contributing property. The original windows were probably steel. When windows fail, which they usually do if they're not bronze, we try to have them replaced with as close to the original windows as possible.
Sure.
I think we need a window inventory. I think we would like to see the original windows that exist in the house.
I believe you have pictures.
I don't know which ones are. See, that's lacking inventory. We don't know what is and what is not. On the north side of the house, would those be original windows, the ones with the mutton?
Yes, the north side. We're doing, I believe, the south and southwest side. I guess it would be stated. It's the back of the house facing the wall. And as I said, they are replaced already. These are not steel windows.
No.
Unfortunately, he is going to need these steel windows replaced at some point. I mean, to give him a window that's architecturally correct and keeps the integrity of the house, you know, steel, and being energy efficient and easy to operate. I don't know where you could find steel windows to help the homeowner, but you know, these in particular are replaced already. They are wood.
Well, we've been through this in a house with a much more severe environment, actually. A house that's might not be as old as this, a house from 1929 that had steel windows. We replaced some with steel and some with bronze. We approved that. We also approved in another section of that house being the Waves on Ledge Road, aluminum windows that resembled closely enough the steel windows.
Sure thing.
So my suggestion is going to be that you take that into consideration, that we get an inventory, precise inventory of the windows that want to be replaced, and some concept of replacing them with the appropriate windows. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
The French doors below those windows, are those original?
They're wood, yes. I doubt they're original, but they're a wood, probably, they're not original, I wouldn't say. They're in decent shape. He's done some replacement, I'm not sure with who. Now with Home Depot, we try and go by the book all the time, every time, so, you know, I'd hate to not get approved for this because we just missed the last hearing, which was over a month and a half ago. This customer is in dire straits. He would have been here today, but he's on business. You know, and he's got his mom in there, and he's trying to replace some of the, you know, bad, insufficient windows for this winter, you know, facing the water, so.
Well, you know...
Mr. Chairman, I'm just a little confused. He's taking a wood window and putting the same wood window back in.
Exactly.
In-kind replacement.
Yeah, so I don't understand.
Because we have, in the past, taken the opportunity when replacing windows that have failed to replace them, to request that they replace them with what would have been the original windows, not in-kind replacement. This was something we went through at the Waves, where they wanted to replace Anderson windows with Anderson windows, and we had them replace them with, I think we allowed aluminum windows that resembled the original steel windows.
Mr. Chairman, we've also approved in-kind replacement for homes. We approved replacing vinyl with vinyl. Contributing structure, vinyl with vinyl.
I don't think I had anything to do with it.
You know, we do want to keep the integrity of the house. That's why this is really...
Well, you're not. Windows are the most important aspect of a house. I mean, it's the soul of the house.
This house is probably probably a half a mile back off the road.
Yeah, I realize that. Have a question about that, or? My suggestion would be to continue the application, have a precise window inventory, and to come up with some idea to replace these with, we would allow aluminum windows, but they should resemble the original steel windows. Unless, if you want to vote on it, maybe you, I don't know where the commission stands, but we can take a vote, and please. They could, if the application is denied, they could come back, and if they made an application for the steel or the aluminum windows, then we would hear it again. It's, the application, if it comes back within a year, has to be significantly different than the existing application. So we can either vote on it or agree to continue it.
I would hope for a vote, I guess. I don't know what to say.
Well, I know it's, in your position, it's difficult because you're representing
my livelihood as well. Not getting things done. You know, just it's you know, I'm trying to just do what the customer is requesting, and again, keep the architectural correctness.
I think we need a better inventory of the windows to be able to make an informed decision. That'd be my input on this.
Allow me to read the staff recommendation into the record. With the listing of the metal casement windows as a character-defining feature, it is the recommendation of staff that the application not be approved as submitted. The vinyl windows as proposed are inappropriate to the structure, and I would say, she puts vinyl, but they are wood.
They're wood, yes.
But that the wood windows as proposed are inappropriate to the structure. Staff further recommends that a more complete window inventory be submitted. Once reviewed upon receipt, staff can make further recommendations as to the condition and whether or not replacement is necessary.
The problem here is because she's got, again, he's saying he's putting wood to wood. Ricky staff is what's the problem.
I think that we have no choice but to continue this and be presented with a complete window inventory of what needs to be replaced.
When this was all submitted, did it just sit for a while until I appeared here, or was any research done on the property with pictures, or do you guys go out there and visualize?
I do. I know the house because I know the client. So yes,
somebody's been out.
Research has been done on it.
Okay.
As far as a detailed, as to the condition of the windows, no, we have to leave that to a staff
And to
member
see if
do
there
that.
was the wood windows, there's wood, that's what there are, they're not steel that I'm replacing?
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Conroy.
your point is well taken, but I would have a problem denying this application if you're replacing in kind.
Yeah, it really doesn't apply here, but I would entertain a motion that we accept the staff findings of fact as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Opposed, Mr. Governors.
Did you read the findings of fact?
Yes.
It only states what the house is. And I would further entertain a motion to continue this application to the December meeting with the applicant providing an inventory of the windows that are to be replaced.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Opposed.
Two opposed.
Opposed? Three
Three
opposed.
opposed. 3 and 3? Where do we stand with 3 and 3, Mr. Weston?
Motion is denied.
So it's not continued.
It's not continuing. We have to vote on it.
All right, then. All right, based on everything I know, I would entertain a motion to approve this application as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
So then the motion is denied. And the
Thank you. So the application is approved, is that correct?
No, the motion was to approve the application, but the motion did not carry. Because the motion was denied.
I'm never sure on a 3-3 vote how that... So, sorry, my mistake. We have two applications for 79 Dixon Street. The first one is a demolition and an addition. Do you have a question for Mr. Weston?
No.
Good evening. My name is Jason McLeavy with Kirby Perkins Construction.
I'm going to ask the secretary to identify the application first.
79 Dixon Street, Plat 35, Lot 282. And they're requesting various exterior alterations.
May I do. Jason McLeavy, McLevy, with Kirby Perkins Construction. May I ask for clarification if this is the main house application or the Gardener's Cottage application?
This
that we're
is...
reviewing first.
Main house first.
You want to do the main house first? It doesn't really matter. Okay.
Sure.
That's actually the one I have in my hand, so...
So the proposal for the main house is exterior work on the east facade. There are currently 4 sets of doors with an arch detail above. And the proposal is to remove the 4 sets of doors and corresponding archways and replace them with windows, a small bump-out addition, and a new single door with side lights on the north side, the northern edge of the east facade. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll continue.
Yes.
The building was actually the stables for the Oakwood estate. So it was originally housed horses, which now houses people. The doors we don't believe are character defining to the property as Dana described them. They were actually installed in 2006 when Brian O'Neill owned the property. So it's a fairly recent addition. And the detailing is also not proper historic. They're actually built with plywood, so they're definitely not a historic detail. We were doing some roofing repairs in the past, and we discovered from the interior side that there's the old original window headers on that side of the building, and they're very small, which indicated a small window which may be from a horse stall, not large like a double door that's there now. So the proposal is to replace the windows that currently exist with new windows that are slightly smaller, another set of windows, then the bump out, and then a single door on the end. We would also like to continue the cornice trim detail, which includes a wood gutter that's copper lined, and we'd like to continue that across the entire facade. Currently, it's cut short to install the arches that are there now. So we feel that would be a more appropriate historical feature to reinstate. Do you have questions?
Is that everything? Yes. Do you, I'm aware that this was a recently approved change, but do you have any documentation of what that was changed from? Are there any existing photographs or or drawings even that show what was here before those French doors?
Of the original building? No.
And this elevation is from previously approved roof railing. So this drawing is from the original, or is that the application from 2006?
No, that is from an application while the property was owned by the current owner, Mr. Donald Tobias.
But he didn't put the French doors in?
No.
No, that's... So I'm seeing French doors on this drawing. It's A4 Architects, it was a Ross Kahn. Yeah. 09. Exactly 3 years ago, 11/25/09.
Right, those doors were installed at that time. That A4 Architects had submitted for the roof railings, and in their existing drawing, the doors existed at that point. This was dated 2009 was this application. And based on building permit records, those doors and arches were installed in 2006 by the previous owner.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So this was for the roof railings only?
Right, that was for the roof railings.
The roof railings, I assume, don't meet code. Is that why the change?
In this drawing? Correct, they did not meet code, and they were never installed.
Oh, I see. They're both too low and the gaps are too wide.
Correct, and Mr. Tobias also does not like that design, so it just never happened.
And you're eliminating the roof rail above the door of the pediment?
Correct.
Any questions for Mr. McVitie?
Not a question, just a statement. I know when I did my site visit, it was very obvious that these doors were not only a recent addition to the building, but they were pretty shabbily constructed. So I do not think that we're looking at any type of historic fabric here.
I concur. What do we have on the staff report? No, I have to disagree with the staff report because they're not character defining because they're not original. However, the findings of fact are pretty basic. If there are no questions, I'll prepare a vote for this. I would entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact as presented in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
I do disagree, however, with the staff comments based on historical data. And I would further entertain a motion to approve the application as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall I remain here? Do you want to do the next one?
You may remain here. I'm going to ask the secretary once again to identify the application.
Dixon Street, Plot 35, Lot 282, various exterior alterations to the gardener's cottage.
Thank you. Just give us a brief overview of this aspect of the application, please.
Certainly. This is the gardener's cottage, which would have also been part of the Oakwood estate. The original structure was comprised of living quarters for the staff and also a greenhouse structure to maintain plants on the property. The greenhouse structure, the entire building is in disrepair at this time. The structure of the house is good, and the exterior of the house is in fairly decent shape. with the exception of the windows and doors. The greenhouse is in complete disrepair. There's very little of the original structure remaining. The proposal here is to refurbish the living quarters portion of the house. The siding is actually in very good condition. It's clapboard siding. We're going to scrape and repaint that and bring that back to its original condition. The cornice moldings and wood gutters, they'll be refurbished also to their original condition. We'd like to replace the existing wood windows with new wood windows. Same location, same configuration, same style. The roof we'd like to replace, it's currently asphalt shingles. We'd like to replace it with wood shingle roof, which we believe would have been original to the property. And the greenhouse portion, it's not economical for Mr. Tovius to build the greenhouse as a glass house, which it was originally, but to use it more as a modern living space. So we'd like to rebuild the greenhouse to look similar configuration. It's within the same footprint, which was 15 feet by 25 feet. The original slab is still there. We'll remove it, but we'll rebuild in the exact same spot to the exact same dimensions. There's a side door existing on the greenhouse structure with a small peaked pediment roof above it. We'd like to keep that feature as well. There is a lot of glass in the structure, but it was a greenhouse. So we'd like to use as much glass as possible, but at the same time we're using less than the greenhouse would have had because we're going to use it as interior space at this time. At least that's what the proposal is. What else are we doing? The greenhouse portion will also have a wood shingle roof to match the roof that we're proposing for the living quarters portion of the house.
So I see that the windows are boarded up. Are they actually missing, or?
The windows boarded. Are you looking at the front porch? There's a front porch on the house that is somebody has boarded over, covered it up over time. We'd like to just take that off and put a simple front door with a simple uncovered open front porch and stairs, which this was a gardener's cottage. It was a very simple house. It was not ornately detailed, as it is barely visible from the street. It was more of a back of house staff house. So we're maintaining simple detailing, and that goes with the front porch also.
So I'm seeing...
Yes, that's the current front entryway, which we don't believe is original, which is why we'd like to remove it. It's very poorly built.
That would be eliminated.
Yes, it's very poorly built also, which is not consistent with the construction of the main body of the house, which is well built by old standards.
And I see on the west elevation there's one existing window.
Yes, correct.
And the dormer windows are boarded up.
Correct.
And behind the other elevation that I just held up, looking at the southeast corner, I'm seeing several boarded up windows, except, I'm not including the...
Yes, much of the glass is missing. It's been in disrepair for a number of years.
And the vintage of this structure is?
The tax record's listed as circa 1900. I'm not sure of the exact date.
So my only question would be the type of windows you're using to replace the ones that are not viable.
The approval, the application is submitted with Marvin architectural wood windows. They're wood interior and exterior simulated divided light.
Usually in these cases for a house of this period, we recommend I believe Marvin makes one, but we know for sure that Brosco Boston Series makes a window that is a true divided light with an interior energy panel, which we have approved for many applications, houses of this time period. So we're hoping that that would be acceptable, and if there are windows that are salvageable, to salvage those windows and reuse them.
We can certainly take that on a case-by-case basis, but I don't believe the windows would be salvageable. They're in very rough shape. Not that they couldn't be matched and built to match the existing windows. I'm not sure if the frame can be saved, and we need new sashes.
Yeah, just be sworn in, please.
Jerry Kirby, owner of Kirby Perkins Construction. Jerry Kirby, owner of Kirby Perkins Construction. Absolutely.
Mr. Kirby.
The owner of this building, we've been discussing how to replace the windows that are beyond repair, and he's willing to do it with a historic replica, custom built in the shop. We do a thing called a Newport sash, which replicates colonial windows in all the detailing, and so it'll be a true divided light window. It can be either thermopane with an antique glass overlay or a single pane. So if that makes it more
Sure.
agreeable,
I mean,
he's happy to do
that's better
it.
than the Brasco window, for sure.
Yeah, it's a better window also.
As you probably know, though, the Brasco window has the interior energy panel. I mean, if you reproduce the windows, you could do it.
If you're happy with that detailing, we do use mahogany for durability, even though it's a paint grade window. And it's a true weight and chain window to replicate the originals.
And in your opinion, the one window that I'm looking at on the west elevation is not salvageable?
Yeah, we gave a good look at. We've restored a lot of original windows, and the sash are so far gone, as are the jambs. Yeah, that one's borderline. We could Dutchman that one, but the rest are really, they need new jambs and sash.
All right, all we'd ask, I mean, we certainly would approve the windows as you describe them, but we'd ask that you submit an inventory to staff within 14 days or so as to which windows are going to be rebuilt and which ones might be salvageable.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commission members?
In the application, it doesn't mention that porch that you're asking to demolish.
The front porch?
Yes.
It's included in the drawings.
It's not part of the application.
When you say it's not in the application, where are you looking to see it?
Are you talking about the bump out on the east elevation?
Well, he described it as a porch.
It's really just an entry portico, I believe, it's not.
Yes.
Right, it's just, there's a covered entry portico, and we'd like to remove it and just have it open stairs with deck and rail.
Well, I didn't look at it when I was there, but you described it as a porch, so I was a little confused as to exactly what you were demolishing.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not a covered porch that we're proposing to rebuild. It's just an open landing with steps and a simple railing, which would have been consistent with a staff housing for the estate. It's not ornate or fancy, but it is. We would be removing a covered porch that is there now. It's actually not a covered porch, a covered entryway.
Which appears not to be original to the building.
It's not built in the same construction or quality.
Very good. Any other questions? I would entertain a motion to approve the findings of fact in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And I would further entertain a motion to approve the application as presented with the understanding that the windows will be custom built and those windows that can be salvaged will be salvaged with an inventory submitted to staff within 14 days.
We can submit photographs of the existing windows and then an inventory listing each window type and its condition, if that would be acceptable. Excellent.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
33 Ledge Road, please.
Good evening. Mark Horan, Horan Building Company, 174 Bellevue Ave, Newport.
Mr. Wren, I'm going to ask the secretary to please identify the application, and then you can be sworn in.
33 Ledge Road, Plat 38, Lot 52, and the application is calling for various exterior alterations.
I do. Mark Horan.
Mr. Wren, if you would please give us a brief overview of the application.
Yes. Let me just preface, last month, this came in, we were going to approve for wood roof replacement, which is now underway, just in the context of the current application. You have before you elevations for 3 sides of the house, east, north, and west, existing condition plan, and also proposed plan for window and exterior door changes. The changes are primarily motivated by interior space reconfiguration. The current plan doesn't have a proper kitchen. It's not in the location. It's functional and works. So the windows are driven by the change in the floor plan. Most of the work takes place in the back or the west exposure of the house. There are several window changes. There's a new door entry system, and there's a new deck. One thing that may not be apparent in the application, which I would like to note, we've determined that we can save 2 of the existing windows and reuse them. East elevation at the front of the house, front street side of the house, window at the back of the house, the west elevation, it's in good shape. It matches the size and detailing of the other 2 adjacent windows. That's the only change that occurs on the street side, is that one double hung window, which would be removed from the back of the house and brought to the front of the house. And there's an additional window on the west elevation, which can also be moved over to match existing. The newer units that are proposed are Marvin clad units.
What am I looking at? East elevation. You're adding a window there to match existing, and what exists there?
There are 2 double hung windows to the left side of the front entry door. There are 2 currently. There are 3 in the proposed plan. So that 3rd unit will come from the back of the house.
Well, I'm sorry,
Will come from the west elevation, where the new kitchen will go. The windows that are being proposed there are larger than what is currently existing, which will be able to recycle and reuse that unit.
So is that the only window addition?
At the east elevation, yes.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at, now I'm seeing a new one. So you take the window, that one small window from the west elevation, use it on the east elevation?
Correct.
And then you're adding the 3 windows, the 3 gang, and those are
Which elevation? You're not
I'm looking at the west now, where
Right.
you've got
Right.
3 narrow windows.
Yes.
And what are those windows? Those are obviously new windows.
Those are new windows. And then the two also, those two smaller windows
Right.
are the new kitchen windows.
And what are we using for windows there?
Marvin, ultra clad.
And the existing windows are single pane,
Yes, with storm combinations.
so we could consider using that, the Marvin single pane or the Brasco with the interior energy panel for those?
Consider it, prefer the Marvin.
Well, you prefer a double glazed window, but they don't exist in the rest of the house, so
Right.
I think we really should keep it consistent. I'm fine with that as long as we use the correct windows. My only problem with the overall look in the elevation is the additional window to the right of the entry.
East elevation
Yeah, no, west elevation.
or west elevation?
I think it's getting awfully window busy.
Oh, I see.
And really not representing the original house. I think on the left side, it's an improvement. On the right side, we're getting a little window crazy. Don't you need a little inside wall space for hanging stuff?
If I could confer with the owner, let me see that.
Or you can have her come up.
I'm sorry.
You can have her come up and
Chairman, the concern is that there's a hallway that extends beyond that window towards the kitchen, and there are no windows in that hallway, so this would help illuminate the hallway. And that's the preference, to have that extra light.
yeah. Okay. Ms. Valdez has a valid question too.
Sure.
Once again, on the west elevation, you have 3 new, rather tall, narrow windows proposed, gang together, to the left of the entry porch. Would it be possible to simply retain the one window that's the furthest left on the elevation as it exists now, and perhaps reuse one of the other 2 windows that are the same size next to it, so you have 2 paired windows rather than the triple gang window, because that element isn't really used anywhere else in the house?
I think that's a good suggestion. Let me just
So we have these 2 here. And we have the windows.
We have this one here, and if you simply took one of these 2
And then we're okay with the smaller windows up there. Porch.
It's probably a kitchen windows. Over a counter.
I think that's a good suggestion. We're agreeable to that. So just to summarize, so we could keep the existing window there and add another window the same size.
Exactly.
Fair. Yeah.
And And then I assume the two shorter windows that are overlooking the porch are kitchen windows that are above the counter, so
Right.
you're limited
That's
to
right.
height there.
Right. You know, in looking, I'll have to check in the field, but it looks like the kitchen windows, the two larger windows which are presently there that are going to be removed are the same size as the one window that you suggested remain.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, that you can
Yeah.
simply take one of
We would
those.
try- yeah, wherever possible, we will reuse them because they're in good shape.
Some more, too.
Right, they're in very good shape.
I'm trying to think of another idea. The house is so crowded to the right of the porch, so crowded with windows, and to me, it really detracts from the style of the house. I understand you need light in the hallway. I'm just trying to think of another solution for that. I don't know. A smaller round window might be. Period.
Yeah.
Does the hallway stretch the entire width of the house, the east to the west elevation?
It does run straight through the kitchen to the front, correct? This window there. The purpose is to eliminate this. Right, but you've got the door, and you have these two, which is an open room. You're not going to be shortage of light. Get that big door, you don't forget. Then you have light coming in here, that's a new door, whereas now it's a blank wall. I think it's okay. I think we're okay with that window, that one window going away.
Great. So we're reusing a window, keeping a window on the east elevation, making that a two-gang, two windows of the same, so you hardly...
Well, if there were two there now, there'll be three on the east elevation. If you look at the existing condition, we have two there, there'll be a third one between the windows and the door.
Well, I don't know. No, on the west elevation.
Oh, okay, west elevation?
Just to clarify, we're taking one of the large windows. The small window is going to be moved to the east elevation.
The only changes on the west elevation would be that instead of the three windows that are ganged together, that scheme would go away. We'd retain the one window and match it with one of the existing windows from the kitchen. So we're just recycling one window.
Great, okay. I think we've accomplished it.
Yeah.
We would want revised plans submitted to staff within 14 days.
That's fine.
So with that understood, I would entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact in the staff report as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I would further entertain a motion to approve the application with the previously discussed changes in mind, with fresh plans being submitted to staff within 14 days.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had wanted to discuss. Oh yes, 1416 John Street.
My recommendation is that I can't recall about this application, and there's no correspondence, I have no notes reflecting anything. I would do a motion to deny the application, with the understanding that if they did request to continue it, then we'll just put a motion
dismissing it.
Well, again, I mean, yeah, I think you need to act on it because of that 14-day.
Oh, okay, because it would automatically be approved.
Right. And again, I don't have any correspondence or notes or anything. So I would say, go ahead and vote to deny the application. Back and if there's some error with notification or something, we can have a motion to reconsider at the December meeting to rehear.
But the word deny, I mean, we can't enter that into a motion. Should I dismiss without prejudice? And then...
We just vote to disapprove.
Or,
yeah, I think, you just put a motion to approve like we normally
all right,
do.
okay.
We vote for it.
Okay. The Secretary, please identify the application.
This is 14 to 16 John Street, Plot 27, Lot 211, and they're requesting various exterior alterations.
I would entertain a motion to accept the staff findings of fact as our findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Further entertain a motion to approve the application as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused about exactly what we're doing. I'm sorry. We're approving this?
No, the ordinance states that if you don't act on an application within 45 days, it's automatically approved. What I'm recommending that you do is you take a vote on a motion to approve it, but deny it. Then if through investigation it turns out they did request a continuance, they did talk to Dana and Dana said okay, or it was continued to the December meeting, I will bring that up at the December meeting and ask you to reconsider your motion.
Okay. So was there a motion on the floor?
No, you have to make
Entertain a motion to approve the application as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
All opposed. The application is denied for the time being.
Until further notice.
The raise on the neighbors.
Yes.
Close the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. The comment I made about Z Rust, we cannot act on that. We need a request from the owner to rescind that application. We'll get to work on that at the staff level. Entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.